Friday, September the 17th, 2021. Now, a lot's happened in the video and stills hybrid camera world this week. Now, the Ordinary Filmmaker news panel is back with us once again to provide you with more in-depth news coverage and their own analysis and opinion. So if you'd like to interact with myself or the news panel while we're talking about various stories, go ahead and drop your question or comment in the comment section and we'll be sure to get to you. And if you're that guy that really wants his question answered right away, go ahead and put it in as a super chat and we'll prioritize your comment. Okay, before we get to the news panel, let's try that again. Before we introduce our news panel, let's take a look at the stories that we're going to be covering tonight. So obviously we're going to cover the Canon EOS R3 and the accessories announced, which was announced on Tuesday. But then this morning, GoPro Hero10 Black was also announced, and there's some wonderful things there. That's looking like my next camera. The Nikon's looking to be coming out with a Sony ZV-1 type entry-level camera, and that's supposed to be 2022. We'll get into a discussion on that as well. Canon made a purchase, and this has got nothing to do with cameras, but it is to do with imaging. OMD, the WOW camera, we have a date range, and we'll get to that. But some of the big news is surrounding the iPhone 13 and the 16-inch MacBook Pro. The iPhone 13 is starting to introduce some cinema-style capabilities. The Nikon FTZ adapter, version 2 or Mark II, is on the way. And NAB, sadly, 2021, once again, canceled. And of course, we're going to get to the Fuji GFX 50S II. Lenses and availability, I actually have the exact dates. All right, now let's go ahead and introduce our panel. We have a new panelist. His name is Magnus of Magnus Video Productions. Magnus, how are you tonight?
Doing very well. Thank you very much, Simon, for inviting me on your show.
I'm glad to have you here. Now, Magnus, just because you're new to my channel, why don't you tell my viewers what kind of work you do? Do you have a channel? Are you a mini Steven Spielberg?
You might say I wear several hats. By day, I actually work for Samsung Electronics.
Oh.
But in my spare time, I do video production work. I've worked with several schools when it comes to dance recitals, and I do weddings and other type of events, video in particular, and some light photography, but I'm focused on video, and that's what my channel's about. Specifically, videos with DSLR and mirrorless cameras and talking about, what you can do with them and all those, also the latest and greatest. So definitely check me out if you're interested in that stuff.
Another Renaissance man. Well, thank you and welcome to the channel. Now, returning with us, we have John Drummond from New York State. John, how are you this week?
Well, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back again.
Oh, I'm glad to have you back. Now, we've got some viewers that are returning, but we also have some new viewers. Would you like to share with us what kind of work you do? I believe you also have a YouTube channel.
That is correct. I have a YouTube channel under my own name, John Drummond. I'm an amateur photographer and a newbie at video. I think so one of the things I'm doing is really just trying to build my craft in terms of the video, in terms of production, things like that. And I think I'm a fairly fast learner, but it's still a work in progress. My channel is about nature and outdoor photography. I live in New York City, and most of my shooting, though, is done, some of it's done actually within city limits, including the video that I shot a couple of days ago and will be up probably tomorrow. And really is about my journey on becoming a proficient nature photographer. So I'm not really gear focused, but I do talk about the gear that I'm using, especially when it's new kit, and talk about how what I'm shooting with affects basically what I shoot and why I shoot it. So that's pretty much it.
All right, well, John, well, thank you very much for joining us. And please, if you're watching and you're not subscribed to either of these gentlemen, please go ahead and like and subscribe because it helps their channels grow as well. And last but not least, returning, James. I think you've been here the most, James, like 4 or 5 times now.
How's it going, man? Thank you for having me back. It's always a pleasure to be here. For those of you guys that are new to me, I also have a YouTube channel. It's James Jackson Films. Some of the content is crossover with a lot of the stuff Magnus does, I talk a lot of camera gears, but I also do tutorials. Recently, I've been doing tutorials on color grading and post-production workflows and things like DaVinci Resolve. But I just love all different aspects of film and video productions. I also own my own video production company called D-Luminous Productions. But if you guys, and like I go very deep into cameras, the sort of like dynamic range and sort of things that would help you can sort of find your way in getting yourself on a film career path. So if that's something you are interested in, you can definitely check that out. But I got to stop you for a second, Simon, because I saw your list. And I
no, where's the mute button?
Something was missing. Aperture. Aperture had their big announcement. They just announced the Nova P600C, their new flagship light. Just yesterday. Big bad boy that's going to be competing with the big boys, the Geminis, the Sky Panel S60s. I love those lights, but I hope we could talk about it a little bit if we have time.
Well, here's my promise to you and everybody watching. This is a 2-hour stream. It's going to be tough to cram everything into this video, but if you're willing to stick around, we can. If we don't have enough time, I'll just extend it a little further, and at least you and I can cover that, James.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Also, a shout out. I've met and interviewed several people this week that are interested in showing up on my channel to act as a guest. So that way we can always provide you with that diversity and opinion to provide you more in-depth commentary that goes behind the scenes. So we'll see. We've got a few people here. Kippy is going to be joining us in a future video as well. Stop the FOMO. Amber Sky Media. I'm just so overwhelmed with the reception to the number of guests that want to appear on this channel. And for me, this is personally an awful lot of fun. I'm really excited. And I do want to say one more thing before I get into the first news story. I get it. It's 2 hours. And I've heard some of you say, I can't afford to spend 2 hours on a Friday evening. My girlfriend will leave me. And I get that. So what I do after the stream is over, I actually unlist it. You can still use the link above and watch it again. But what I do is I chop it up into pieces. So our first story is going to be on the R3. I'll chop that up, put it out as a separate video on Saturday, and then I'll put the rest out Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and so on, as long as there's content. And that way you can still watch these stories later without having to sit through an entire 2 hours, or 2 hours plus if we get to James's story.
Yeah, you should never choose us between your girlfriends. So if it's between that, do what you got to do. Well, maybe except for John. I mean, John's got some more soothing voice.
There you go.
Yeah. I don't. Why bring me into this? I got a wife, man.
So don't choose your girlfriend then.
Let's go ahead and tackle our first story here.
Please.
Now, some of you might already be tired by this first story, but the Canon... Did I press the right button here? I'm trying to make sure I press the right buttons. Let's try this again. The Canon EOS 3 is Canon's latest, well, honestly, it's a flagship camera. The EOS R3 is better in most ways than the Canon EOS R1. Let's take a look at some of the specifications here. Now, you'll remember that Canon made a development announcement back in April, and it seemed like it's an excellent camera for photojournalists, but if you're a video person, maybe not. Well, we're going to get to the video specs shortly, but the Canon R3 is using a 24.1 megapixel back illuminated sensor, stacked sensor, and it's using that same Digic X processor found in the R5, 6, and 1DX Mark III. It does have 8 stops of IBIS, and it does shoot continuous blackout-free shooting. But the one thing that I'm really excited about here is that this camera has made some significant improvements to, well, the autofocus system. Now let's take a look at the specs here. The autofocus system received several upgrades. Now it is dual pixel 2, same as in the R5, but it now does, over the entire coverage area, 1,056 autofocus points. And of course, it has that nifty new feature found, well, nifty, everything old is new again, feature found in the EOS 3 eyeball controlled or eye controlled autofocus, meaning that whatever you look at becomes the focus point. And it actually works quite well. I've watched several videos from Gordon Lang to Fronos, and this looks like it works quite well. But wait, there's more. Like the R5 and the R6, we have eye-controlled autofocus for humans as well as head and subject detection. We have eye-controlled autofocus for birds, but it also works well for dogs, cats, and other animals. I've even had it work on insects. So anything with large eyes, it seems to do well in. But, and this is really awesome here, do you like cars? Do you like racing across the land? And do you like to be out there with your friends shooting these cars? I've never seen so many gratuitous car shots of cars spinning their tires, of cars racing around inanimate objects, chasing through the desert, racing with buddies around a track until the R3 came out. And that's because, as you can see here, the Canon EOS R3 does a really good job of tracking cars. And it'll do it in one of two ways. It'll track the car, but if it detects a helmet, well, it's going to lock onto that. So I'm really quite impressed with some of the some of the features like autofocus that will aid in the video. But this is where I want to really go back and take a look at. Yes, it's got a 5.76 million .EVF. Sure, that's great. It's got an optical viewfinder simulation. But let's take a look at these video specs here. 6K, 60 frames per second, raw. And it can do 4K oversampled. It can do 6K oversampled 4K, and it can do it at 60 frames per second. The R5, well, it can do 8K oversampled 4K. It can only do it up to 30 frames per second. So if your name's Tony Northrup, and I know you're watching, you can do 4K 60 on the R3 and get that super detailed resolution. And what we've seen with the R5, it's actually more detailed than the A7S III if you're in that 8K oversampled mode. But wait, there's more. So 6K 12-bit raw DCI, 24 to 60 frames per second, but it also does 120 frames per second in 4K. And they bumped it up to 120 frames per second in 1080 as well. No extra love there. And unlike the C70, once again, Canon decided that we don't need sound. There's no way we're going to take that slow motion clip and speed it up now, is there? Now, there's other things too. It has Canon Log 3, BT709, BT2020, and Cinema Gamut, and it's actually quite light. It weighs just about a kilogram or 2.2 pounds. But, and this is, I know you've all been asking for this. If you haven't watched the news, you've probably been working really hard, so I know what you're asking. I know what you're thinking. Does it have that 30-minute record limit? Well, Canon still in their infinite wisdom decided to put a record limit in it. But it's 6 hours. I don't get that. Well, hold on, James.
That is awesome.
I don't know anybody that's going to record for 6 hours internally in 6K that they're going to have enough storage to do that. Usually you're going to store it after about an hour or two. You're recording to some sort of external device. But wait, I know what you're thinking. Yeah, it's probably 1080, right? Or that standard 4K, which is line skipped. Nope. That's right. Our friend, Gordon Lang, who I'm trying to get on this channel for an interview, did a test. 6K, 25 frames per second. He went the whole 6 hours, and he shows it on screen. And you know what? There was no overheat warning. So if you're that guy who commented on my website saying, yeah, but it's still 6 hours, just press and stop the record button. I mean, what are you doing recording for 6 hours? So I've been talking for too much time now, like 10 minutes, and I want to turn it over to our first guest, Magnus. Magnus, what do you think of the R3?
Honestly, I think that this camera is really designed for professional photographers for like sports. And on the video side in itself, I was impressed with a lot of the features, especially the 6K raw recording up to 60 frames per second. I did not expect that. But the feature that impressed me the most was honestly removing that 30-minute time limit. That not only impressed me the most, but it also disappointed me, because that's something that should have been in Canon cameras for a long time. So exciting camera. I love the fact that it can do 60 frames per second in 6K. I mean, amazing. Yeah. But here's to the future of Canon, and hopefully a firmware update for the R5 and R6.
Okay, James, do you think Canon's going to show the love and say, "Hey, R5 owners, you only spent $4,000. Here's the record limit removed"?
Yes. Short answer. Yes. I'll make my bold prediction statement right here and right now. I'll put money on it. They're going to remove the 30-minute record limit in the R5. At the very least. Maybe I'm not sure about the R6, but they'll definitely do it for the R5. I hope they will do it for the R6 as well. It's just a matter. I just think they're going to wait until after the R3 is out. It's out in the wilds. They'll do like close to what Sony did with the A7S3 and the FX3, whereas the FX3 had S-Cinetone when it came out, and then after it came out, they released the firmware for the A7S3 to get S-Cinetone. But to me, I think it's a foregone conclusion. Because there's no argument, there's no logical argument outside of just trying to just give Casey a reason to throw the hammer at him.
Wait, I see it. Okay, I have to interrupt.
There's no reason. You got the same process because you got the same processor.
I'm out of here. I just, you know what Robert just reminded me, and I had this written down, but I'm wearing Canon glasses, and everything's rosy with Canon glasses.
Exactly.
For God's sake, $6,000, and we still have that micro HDMI? Really?
Yeah. No, I mean, there's still a lot of things. I think Magnus was on the point. Look, this is a Simon, me, and Magnus. We're very video-focused people.
Yeah.
But this is still a photography first camera. I think we mentioned this last time. I still think this is the main purpose of people who getting this camera are journalists or sports coverage people who need to who are mainly there to take photos, to get the shots, need the speed, but want to quickly switch over to video to capture things. That is the primary. And then but I also think, and I mentioned this on my channel as well, on my YouTube channel, that the secondary market is all of those people who basically love the 1DX, mainly the 1DX Mark II, and some people the 1DX Mark III, but mainly that 1DX Mark II, and the 1DC, who love that form factor, but wanted the power of that video. So the Peter McKinnons, the Casey Neistats, the Creative Ryans of the world, like I could see some of them just going in and getting this camera. I know y'all shocked about the 6K 60. I wasn't because this clearly almost everything about it was the 1DX Mark III, only intense, like cranked up on steroids. So the 1DX Mark III had 5.5K RAW at 60 frames per second. They just added a few additional megapixels to get it to the 6K, and now we get 6K 60 frames per second. So I'm happy for it, but it's also pointing out a lot of things that I'm like, okay, you clearly could put some of this stuff in the R5. The one thing that we haven't mentioned yet, the fact that you now can do auto white balance by just instead of taking a picture, going in, clicking on press white balance, find the image you want, select that, and use that as your white balance. You can now just tap and then boom. Like, it's one of the things I love about the C70. You press a button, it balances. You got something white, press the button, boom, white balance perfectly. And it's now on this camera as well. I hope that comes into the R5 as well.
I kind of wish we had Conrad Barrington here because he is a photojournalist. He's grown up in South Africa doing a lot of this. But we do have a close second. We have John Drummond. And John, the R3, I do see it. I say photojournalism, but really I personally think in this modern age that most photojournalists out there, they're not just working for a newspaper. That newspaper has a web presence. So yes, get the photos, but also get the video if you can. What do you think about this camera as somebody who's a content creator for the news media?
Well, I do see this camera as it's clearly as a professional body, but more than that, I think it's really a specialist professional's body because you did talk about it's really geared for fast action, sports, photojournalism. I would say wildlife, but maybe big game because the 24 megapixel sensor isn't going to be too great for birds probably. And that's one of the things I know people are carping about already. But really, I think the target audience for this camera doesn't really care about that because, as you said, they're not shooting for big prints. They're not shooting to do a lot of cropping. They're probably going to be shooting a JPEG. Zip it over to their phone, send it out to their editors or whoever, right away. That's the bulk of the people who are going to be using this camera. And it's built like a tank and yet very light. And to find that it weighs just maybe a couple of ounces more than my 5D Mark IV did is really stunning. So it definitely has a lot of things going for it. I'm personally excited about, since I am a photo first person, I'm very excited about, say, that the eye control autofocus, which does seem to work really well. Basically what it does, for those who haven't seen the videos and such, it seems to, when you turn it on, it works with the eye control, eye detect or whatever other autofocus. But what it does is, as you're looking at a subject, it kind of puts like a kind of a pre-focus circle on it, but it doesn't actually shift the focus point to that point until you hit either your back button or your trigger, shutter button, whichever one you use to focus, and that's when the focus point jumps. But it seems to work, very well for those people who have been using it. I think that's something that could. Obviously, that's not something that's going to be trickled down to curl bodies. That's obviously a hardware thing that has to be at some point, and maybe our R5 successor body might have that particular feature. But there's a lot of stuff in here that's really good. I mean, certainly the 30-minute recording limit that is definitely should be uploaded as software to the R5 and R6 at the minimum. It's not a camera that I would buy just because I'm more of a generalist than a specialist. But I can certainly see people who are in the sports and photojournalism and maybe big game wildlife would be very excited about this camera, and rightly so. And it does a lot. It does a lot of things.
John, I got to ask you a question here. So this is faster. It's 30 frames per second electronic versus 20 frames on the 1DX Mark III. But the 1DX Mark III, I believe, reaches 16 frames per second mechanical, if I remember correctly. Right. The R3 only has 12 frames per second mechanical shutter.
Yeah, that's true, but I believe it also defaults to electronic as opposed to other cameras default to the mechanical. It's really designed to be used with the electronic shutter. And speaking of which, this also has a feature that I believe the Alpha 1 does also, in terms of being able to turn on an artificial shutter click sound, which makes it a lot easier to basically tell when you're shooting and when you're not. Because I was just burning the other day with my R5, and while I've gotten used to having a totally silent camera, it would sometimes be nice to be able to have some kind of a audible feedback as well as visual to tell that you're really not shooting by mistake. Because the first couple of times I used it, I just shot off like a couple of hundreds exposures without realizing it. So that's something that would be good. I mean, again, this is a very, very loaded camera.
Yeah, it certainly is. I just want to bring up a super chat from Stop the FOMO, some romantic listening to your channel while driving. So I hope it keeps you awake. I hope this is exciting enough. It's not going to put you to sleep. I want to throw this question out to you, James. I see this, honestly, I really would love to have this camera, but 7,500 Canadian, I'm not going to touch this. There's taxes on top of that. I just can't justify it. The work I do, no, but if I was video first and I still want to do some photos, would you say this would be a good camera? Or what about the C70, the Alpha 1, or the A7S III, the FX3, FX6?
I think, honestly, that should just, the cameras you just named off of, just think about it. I mean, outside of the C70, because, well, yes, you technically could take photos with it. It's not a photo camera. It is built, designed, I'm using the C70 right now. It's built, designed for video. But this Alpha 1, the A7S III, FX3, this should just tell you like the great time we are in right now. Just the amount of cameras that any sort of demographic you're in, whether if you are a serious professional person who takes photos, or somebody's more video-centric focus that wants to grab some quick stills while you're doing your work, or you're doing either you're a hobbyist transitioning into more of a career, or if you're somebody that's in the intermediate, there's a camera for everybody here. In terms of somebody that's just more video focused, there's still some things that, like in terms of the C70 is about $500. As somebody who's just purely a video shooter, I still say, even though it's just a 4K camera, the C70 is a better choice. It still will have the better dynamic range. The DGO sensor just obliterates there's literally only maybe 2 cameras under $10,000 that compete with the DGO sensor. Like I've because I've gone through all of them. The sensor on that is incredible in terms of dynamic range, how much you can take, but also just more of the video centric features.
Yeah.
The C70 has built-in NDs. The C70 has false color. The C70 has waveforms. The C70 has shutter angle. The C70 has a plethora of options. Now, I do like the fact that the R3 does have a lot of function buttons that you can map to. I do like that, but it's still a hybrid. At the end of the day, a hybrid camera, and there's always going to be limitations with a hybrid camera compared to just a true dedicated video camera. And you can get them close, and in terms of image quality, maybe close. Like obviously, the R3 is going to have more details, being a 6K versus a 4K sensor. But just to have literally, I just need the handle, the top handle of the C70, the microphone, 2 batteries tops, and a lens, and I can shoot all day on the C70 with pretty much nothing else. But I will also say the R3 comes probably the closest of the hybrid cameras of the R5s, the R6, A7S. It's probably the closest where you don't have to add too much in the stuff you could add. Canon already has it in terms of NDs. Canon has their variable ND adapter, so you don't have to worry about screwing things on the front. You can just use that if you want to stick to EF glass. You have you can use obviously something like an Atomos Ninja 5 to get different options if you don't want to deal with the HEVC codecs. But at the end of the day, to me, the C70 is a better video camera still, and it's cheaper. I would still choose that. In terms of the A7S III,
You're not going to take us through every camera, are you, James?
Yes, he
no,
is.
no, I'm going to stop. I'm sticking at the A7S III.
He's just warming up.
We've only got an hour and a half left.
He's about to start taking notes.
I'm trying to be quick with all this. In terms of the A7S III, I think it's close. Obviously, the price difference is going to be the big deal.
Yeah.
If price is obviously a big deal to you, obviously the A7S III is going to be. But I also think it has. You don't have to worry about buying an external monitor or external recorder to record RAW. You got RAW right in there, so that saves you money right there. You got some amazing lenses that are coming up. Some that were even announced, even though they're on the lower end. The RF lineup is like really, really amazing. Not the G Master line is too,
Yes.
but price-wise, they're about the same as well. So I think a lot of video people are going to be interested in it, but the C70 is still the king.
Thanks a lot,
I
James.
want to just add one thing also in terms of the other thing that the R5 and the R6 were known about is rolling shutter, and the R3 from the videos that I've seen is much less reduced. It's not quite as good maybe as the Alpha 1, but it's a very, very close second. So I think people who are going to be shooting electronic shutter or doing video and panning, you're not going to see like the leaning buildings and stuff the way that or the curved, the circle-shaped golf club, that kind of thing. You're not going to see that in the R3. So that's a big improvement. Supposedly, even though it has the same processor, it's been programmed differently from what I think the Canon people were saying. I was watching a B&H photo live cast a couple of days ago on launch day, and they were talking about that supposedly it's been programmed differently that allows a faster readout. So which is critical for reducing or eliminating rolling shutter. So that's a major improvement over the other Canon models.
Yeah, it's definitely a nice camera. Now, Magnus, I want to touch on something else that also was announced. And you know what? I'm surprised I haven't heard a lot of chatter on this. So let me set up let me send the ball across the plate and then I'll let you hit it. Canon also released several accessories. Now, the R3 has a new hot shoe, which allows things such as the new stereo mic to work. So it's got that digital interface. And I really like that. I really think that Sony's done a great job with the, I can't remember the name of it. It's also a microphone that sits on top, doesn't have any cords, doesn't require any batteries. But that thing is incredible with the options it gives you. Now, the Canon one looks pretty good, but it does have a battery. So there is that. And that kind of has me at $399. I'm kind of thinking maybe not. What do you think about the new hot shoe and some of the accessories and lenses that Canon released along with the R3?
As far as Canon adding that hot shoe, I think they're really taking a page off of Sony's book on this one, on the Sony's playbook. But I believe since Sony's more of a technology company, they're able to, and they develop their own sensors, and they're really in multiple types of electronics, where as Canon seems to focus predominantly on imaging and printing. I believe that Sony is able to just in-house develop what they need to make their cameras and specifically their accessories just work with each other. They've got the teams, they've got the engineers to make it work. While Canon, of course, their engineers are amazing. The fact that the R5 unexpectedly was released with 8K last year, and now the R3 is still turning heads. These accessories people have been asking for, at least the hot shoe with the microphone. I know, like Tony Northrup, as an example, he's been saying, "Hey, I love my Sony because you can do this and connect it on top rather than plug it in on the side." So it's nice that Canon's doing it, but they still have just kind of a ways to go. And Canon has that reputation of, it seems like the competition, picks up steam and Canon lags behind. And then, especially with the R5 and R6, they kind of jumped ahead of everyone else. But the competition is quick to catch up to them.
Well, I got to say, Magnus, I think you're right there. The competition is very steep, but I think the competition right now, it's, as so many have said, it's a two-horse race. Right. We have to still wait to see what Nikon's going to do with the Z9, if Panasonic's finally going to catch up to the 20th century, do phase detect autofocus. Sorry, the 21st century. But I see this as a two-horse race between Sony and Canon. But before I close this off and go into the next one, I want to know if anybody would like to add a final point to the R3, because I know we can spend hours on the R3, but I've got about other stories to get through. So final comments. I'll give each of you 30 seconds. Let's go with you, John.
Well, like I said before, this is an outstanding camera, but it's a bit of a specialist camera. So, not people who are more of a general shooter, like such as me, is not going to get as much out of it, maybe as I'm currently getting out of my R5. But on the other hand, if you're shooting on the side of the NFL or the Olympics or whatever, this is the camera you want. I mean, the other thing, of course, that we didn't talk about, well, I guess we touched on it a little bit, is the glass, because Canon leads the world in terms of the mirrorless big glass. Sony is catching up. Nikon, I don't know where they are in terms of native glass for their Z mounts. So, I mean, Canon has made a major statement here, and what it really does now is set up the R1. Because if this is not their quote unquote flagship, then what the heck was the R1 going to have? That's the next big question that's going to be out there for the next 6 months or whenever, until the R1 comes out.
Oh, I'm saving that story for a slow news week. All right, James. 30 seconds.
This is officially a two camera company race between Sony and Canon, and we need to press Canon continuously to remove the 30-minute record limit in the R5 and the R6, and bring features that I think it deserves, including shutter angle, including waveforms, including an update on that white balance.
And we know they can do it. Magnus, you have the final word on the R3.
All right. If nothing else, two very important things. First, all the videos released up to this point on the R3 are pre-release. It's not actual reviews. So pay attention to the reviews. I would hold off before ordering it and making that final decision to see what flaws it might have. Second, R3 is a step in between the 1DX Mark III and the upcoming R1. So if you're unsure, perhaps you should wait off and see what the R1 has to offer.
Yeah, very good point. And if you are looking at purchasing any of the gear that we talk about in this channel, I do have a link down below to B&H where you can go and look at the specs. You can see the comments and purchase if you wish. But the R3, it was sold out the first day. All right, let's move on to our next topic. The GoPro Hero10 was released today. This thing is incredible. I mean, 4K video at 120 frames per second. It's got a new processor at second generation. It's 23.6 megapixels, and you can pull 19.6 megapixel stills from video. So 4K 120, 2.7K at up to 240 frames per second. with a maximum of 5.3K at 60 frames per second, improved low light. And of course, you strap this to your skateboard, your dog, whatever it is that's moving. And with that HyperSmooth 4.0, that IBIS on steroids, I think that it should be my next camera. I mean, $499. Canon just released 2 lenses, the 16mm and the 100-400, and I got to tell you, after watching this video, after taking another look at the GoPro Hero 10, this at $500 would fill a hole in my lineup when I'm out riding bicycles and I'm trying to take the shots. You have no idea how difficult it is to hold this in one arm with your R5 and a 50mm like this, like I'm Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I'm not, when I could just strap it to my son's helmet. And so I think $400, this is something I'm going to seriously look at. And everyone's laughing at me, so I'm going to turn this over to the panel. John, I'm going to hand it over to you. What do you think of the GoPro Hero 10?
Well, it certainly looks like it fills a lot of holes. I mean, one thing. I mean, I have a Hero 8 which I use occasionally. Actually, with the video that I have coming up, I basically just, since most of my video is shot with my R6 when I'm set up on a tripod, but when I'm walking through the woods or something like that, walking and talking, I'm using my Hero 8, and it works pretty well. I don't use a lot of the special effects stuff like this, like the super slow mo or hyperlapse and things like that. What I do see is that the image quality from the clips that's just shown, is really, really good. I mean, the stabilization on the GoPros is probably without peer in my book. Where I have problems with Hero 8, where I have problems with the Hero 8, and where I know Casey has complained about, say, the Hero 8 and the Hero 9, is say reliability and audio specifically, because sometimes, I mean, I have a media mod, so sometimes the sound clicks, a couple of times the sound has completely failed, things like that. So that's one thing I don't know if the Hero 10 has addressed that, either with its inboard mic or with its media mod, if it has a media mod yet, which I don't know if it does. But it does look like a really exciting camera, and really shooting at 240 FPS and the modes that it has. I mean, for people who are really want to document the action lifestyle, that's definitely a camera that needs seriously looking at.
I got to tell you, this thing has me excited because I like to produce really smooth video, and I swear by gimbals. Sure, a couple of days getting used to them, but once you get your first super smooth video, it's just amazing. And I made the mistake of taking the R5 out to the forest with my son several weeks back. I put this light on top. It's what's it called again? The Pocket Light F7 Mini. And in low light in the forest, this thing's bright enough to just shine everything up. It does a great job. I was so focused on testing this out that I completely forgot to bring my gimbal. And there's some video I couldn't use because when you're walking with it, you know how it just sort of jerks the frame? The IBIS just can't keep up. And, to have something like the GoPro Hero as a backup device. But, John, the one thing I always really pay careful attention to whenever I go out, I always record with the internal camera. And I usually put my Sennheiser MK400 on the rig. But I also will mic up my talent as well because,
Yeah,
you've got the perfect video, and then your audio fails, and it's a big kick in the teeth.
No, you're absolutely right. I know we've talked about that before, and I know you've given me some recommendations in terms of external audio and recording, dually and that kind of thing. So definitely something ongoing. Definitely need to look at.
Yeah, and just for you guys, if you want to know the equipment I use, this is what I often. Let's put it right up here. Cover my eyes so it'll go into focus. Nope, I probably played with the focus. So this is a Sennheiser MK400, and they just released a new one. This dead cat in the wind, this thing's going to look after you. I know, the Rode VideoMic Pro, it's pretty good, but I have that too, and out in the wind, a little bit of wind, it's terrible. It's like fingers on a chalkboard. Whereas this, I was in 40 kilometer an hour winds or about 25 mile an hour winds. And with this, without the wind filter turned on, you could hear the wind, but it sounded like wind. With the wind filter turned on, I was a little more tinny, but the wind was gone. Really good. But I also use a lavalier microphone, the Tascam. It's not wireless. I don't like wireless. I've got companies constantly saying, you want to test this? I don't like it because I don't have to worry about interference. I plug it on here, I put it in the pocket or someplace on my talent, and it never fails. And those are the mics I use most of the time. I do have a Maneo here that I would use for this channel instead of this cheap mic. But because I'm in like a 40 by 40 room, hardwood floors, walls, the echo is horrible. I can't believe this cheap mic does a good job, so that's why I'm using this. But now let me turn it over. So Magnus, I haven't given you a chance. What do you think of the GoPro Hero?
You know, I'm strangely impressed by the smallest things, and this GoPro Hero, two things actually is what actually impressed me the most. First is the fact that you could actually like rotate it up to like 45 degrees, and it can keep everything in your horizon, you know, completely straight and stable, which I think is pretty amazing. And the second thing, and this is a little bit more minute, but and this might be just for GoPros in general. A lot of people would say, okay, well, you know, I don't need a GoPro. I have my phone and I could just mount it wherever I need it and I'll be just fine. Phones nowadays have stabilization, but they don't compare it to GoPro stabilization. But the other thing is that the smoothness that you get off of GoPro footage when you're recording is night and day, because your phone, for example, when it's recording on a bright day outside, it's going to have to increase that shutter speed just to get exposure correctly. But this GoPro, it just looks smooth. It looks like you've got the right perfect settings as you need them to film smooth footage. So that's actually what I like the most. And the features of 5.3K 60 frames per second, which is improved from the Hero9, which was 5K at 30 frames per second. 4K 60 went to 4K 120 in Hero10. It's like they doubled everything from the Hero9. So that's pretty impressive year over year, at least from when it comes to improvements.
It's certainly my hero. One thing, if you go back a couple of weeks, I did a review of the Zhuang Weebill 2. It was actually the Weebill 2 option package. And if you look at the beginning of that video, just the first minute and a half, you'll see three scenes. One where I'm out on a bridge. The sun hasn't risen yet. Then I'm in the forest. The sun is up a little bit, but as you can imagine, the low light is not so good. Then I go deep into the forest. Low light's terrible. And the only thing I have on my R5 for light is this little thing here. So you can imagine these aren't super powerful. And in that third scene, I only set this to about 40%, because if I had set it much greater, the background would have been completely, well, it wouldn't have looked very good. The R5 did have a 50mm f1.2 on it. And people who say I use my phone, and yes, you can, but when you go to video, you really want to keep that shutter at 1/60th, at 1/30th, at worst, in order for your video to look pretty good. And when you do that, and you're dealing with a sensor that's not nearly as good as a Micro Four Thirds for letting light in, when you got a lens that's f2.4, you multiply that by 4, and you're looking at around f8 to f12 as your minimum aperture. So you go into low light with anything like that, you're not going to get the detail. So it really does matter. Your full sensor makes a difference, but this is where it's about choosing the right tools. The R5, the GoPro Hero, they each have their own use cases. And James, I'd like to hand it over to you. We've only got you can't take 10 minutes on this one, but what are your thoughts on the Hero Pro and the use cases, and do you have one?
No, I don't. The closest thing to the to the GoPros I have is my Osmo Pocket, which it's at the end of the day, I think these are all just great tools to have. For the people that do those action cams that do that, it's great. I look at it from a filmmaker standpoint. I see these as great tools to just be like action cams when maybe you can't afford like a Komodo or something like that, but just to go in and get it in places that typically most cameras can't get, or you may be afraid to get just because of, damage. It's another tool in the arsenal, and it's just all the features that it has tells me two things, and that's one, it's another way for filmmakers and content creators to get creative in the content they produce with the images that they can produce with 5.6K 60 frames per second. But the second thing is GoPro is also giving us more reason why the compact cameras are going away. And pretty much if it's not pretty much it's the smartphone and GoPro. I've put them in the same category, but they're really taking over a lot of the hobbyist or the person that travels, or the moments capturing.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
these things are going to be there to help, or the what I call the moment capture moments for all different types of people.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
All right. So what I want to do now is I want to give each of you 30 seconds to sort of your final thoughts on the GoPro Hero 10, and is it something that you would buy? Let's start off with you, John.
Well, if I didn't already have a Hero 8, I would definitely be looking at the Hero 10 for the limited uses that I do it. Having a Hero 8, I'm not sure if it's, for what I do. I don't think that the bells and whistles that the Hero 10 has, which are significant, I don't think they help me for what I do, simply because I rely mostly on my R5 and R6 for my video purposes. But for the action lifestyle, especially if you want to do like scuba diving and that kind of thing, cliff jumping, whatever. The Hero 10 sounds like a great deal.
Thank you. James?
Uh, Nothing else. I think I'm really interested to see what people can do with this.
I
That's
can't
all
believe
I'm
James a loss
interested.
of words. All right, Magnus,
I have
you have the
my
final
moment.
comment.
All right. So my opinion on the GoPro is really, if you're not in a GoPro at all, I feel that almost it'll be the best use case is when traveling starts to open up a lot. I think
Mhm.
GoPro Hero 10 is a great buy. But if you already own a GoPro, then I'm not sure if that'll actually entice you enough to
Right,
replace it with
right.
this one.
Fair enough. And because I have a channel, I'm kind of forced into getting these things, so you don't have to. Or at least so that you can see what a regular person, can I produce the same things that you see in these videos? And sometimes it's hard to do that, whereas other times, like when I showed you my 10-foot tomato tree, it's amazing what these things can do to. Well, one person even asked me, "Did you have some sort of trolley or something set up?" And no, that was handheld, and I got it very smooth all the way up. It didn't shake. Really, really good. So enough of the GoPro 10. Let's head over to some sad news. Earlier this week, we heard. Well, let me see if I can cue up the slide first. That's not the slide I'm looking for. Let's try this again. Sorry, guys. Amateur hour here. Earlier this week, Sony, Canon, and Panasonic pulled out of NAB. And Sony more or less went on to say, look, you know what? It's not you, it's us. We're concerned about health and safety, so we're going to pull out. And shortly, all the Japanese companies pulled out. And then by the time Thursday rolled along, NAB 2021 was canceled. Sadly, to me, when 2020 was a tough year, and as I moved into 2021, I thought, this is going to be great. We're going to get a lot of great camera announcements, a new Sony, new Canons, new Sonys, Canons, Panasonics, the GH6, and it started really good. We had the Sony Alpha 1, then nothing, dead silence. And as I thought we were starting to pull out of things, it's like we're thrown back into it. And, with the cancellation of NAB, it just feels like I've been sucker punched once again. Now, NAB 2021 was supposed to see some incredible things. That 8K camera, the cinema camera that Canon was teasing us with, and it's real. This is not a rumor. They released a video on YouTube from their marketing department showing you they have an 8K cinema camera, and then nothing. But Canon rumor says that's going to be coming out at NAB 2021. So they'll probably do what Sony did and go ahead with a virtual press conference. Sony's is doing theirs on October the 10th at 9 a.m. And if Canon's going to borrow from last year, they'll probably do theirs at 10 a.m. You remember that? I think it was Sony. I believe it was Sony or Panasonic booked theirs. Canon booked theirs an hour later, and then Sony or Panasonic, they moved theirs. So we'll just have to wait and see. So I'm kind of disappointed by what's going on with NAB 2021. James, you're a big video guy as well. Why don't you lead this one off and tell me what you think the impacts of this is, and really what you think we're going to see out of 2021 in terms of Sony, Canon, Panasonic, and others.
It really is. It's really disappointing and sad. I was actually looking forward to going. I actually went my first time to NAB in 2019, and I loved it. It was just a great environment to be around people of like-minded, just talking to people who just not only love the process of love filmmaking, but the people who love building the tools to help filmmakers create their needs. That's a what I hope is that we can sort of give back, because while the virtual shows are cool, that interaction is heavily missed.
Yeah.
And that was one of the big things about NAB. So I hope we can hopefully we'll eventually get past this and we can get back to that. What do I expect in terms of Sony, I think I'm pretty sure the last thing that's really on their list is the A7 IV. In terms of the Alpha line.
Last?
No, that's the one that I can think of that's maybe on the list that they may come out. Is announced at NAB is the A7 IV. In terms of Canon, we haven't heard about the R5C, and I don't know if we'll hear about it then. I was more interested in hearing about their 8K cinema cameras. That was and I think that's like knowing what NAB is, because really it's broadcast. It's a broadcast convention. So it would make sense that Canon, for that time period, for what NAB was going to be, they would probably announce their new cinema cameras. I think they're going to probably be RF, and they're going to be 8K, and they're going to have these new sensors.
Yep.
With DGO and this brand new sensor that, if it's true, it's going to be insane.
It's going to be some heavy lifting stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm hoping Panasonic does an upgrade on their Mount
Alliance.
Alliance.
All right.
I definitely want to see an update on the S1H, the S1, and the S1R from Panasonic. But I think we'll probably see something like the GH6 potentially. So those are my thoughts.
All right, from your mouth to God's ears.
Yes.
Magnus.
So, first of all, the cancellation of the shows, especially after Canon and Pana and everybody pulled out, it's not a surprise. But we're at a different time where these companies have the ability to make announcements to actually get people's eyes and onto whatever they need to present from a web-based perspective. It's not the same as a hands-on, of course, because you want to get this stuff as a hands-on experience. But I think the strategy, at least during these times, is just send out test cameras to whoever's going to give good PR to the cameras, and then just do a web presentation whenever they possibly can, until we're able to get back to convention status. When it comes to any anticipated cameras, from Canon, I didn't see anything much like James said. Maybe I don't see anything in 2021. If they can squeeze in a mini announcement over the R5C, that would make sense. Mm-hmm. And then of course stick to their cinema line with 8K. Panasonic, I honestly think, again, the GH6, follow up on the GH5, which I've got right in front of me, and would be something that a lot of eyes would be paying attention to. And from Sony's perspective, I think maybe perhaps add another camera to their FX line. Yeah. But I think their at least lineup as of right now is pretty stacked. So I have no idea what to expect, because sometimes these companies can surprise us.
Before I turn it over to John, just to give you guys an update on some of the rumors. So the Lumix, or the Panasonic Lumix GH6, is far from a rumor. Panasonic provided a development announcement not too long ago and said it's in development and going to be here in 2021. And the slide shows, yes, Lumix GH6 in development and will be here in 2021. It is going to have a new sensor and a new engine. 10-bit 422 DCI 4K up to 60 frames per second, unlimited video recording, 10-bit 4K 120, HFR, VFR video recording, and 10-bit 5.7 60 frames per second video recording. Got a pretty good memory, right? Now, the slide over here has it. I don't have it here, otherwise I'd flip it up so you could see it. Now, the R5C, something a lot of us who have the R5 are very curious about. I love the video capabilities in the R5. I cannot afford to go to cinema. And I'm curious about the R5C. But Canon Rumors hasn't said anything in months, and that's where we first heard it from. Will it be this year? Maybe, maybe not. we were thinking that maybe it would be a NAB 2021 announcement, and that could still happen. But I've heard nothing, so we don't know where that's going. We've also heard that Canon's getting ready to release some APS-C or system cameras, which makes a lot of sense, especially some affordable ones. They're looking at replacing the EOS RP with a more affordable, if you can believe that, a camera starting at around $899. Now let's go back to the GH6. We were expecting we would get an announcement on the 20th anniversary of the Lumix line. Yeah, we just missed that. So, we are in, as you've seen this week, we're getting tons. We got the Hero, we got the R3, we got the iPhone. We've got a lot of announcements this week. So from now, going forward for the next month up to the end of October is really a time for camera companies to release their stuff. It's not like the beginning of the year where we have from January all the way up to May. So John, let's take it back to you to comment on this decision. And also, have you heard of any other trade shows that are being canceled as well?
I haven't heard about, I certainly haven't heard about any other trade shows that's being canceled, but it doesn't mean that they won't be. I mean, going back to Sony pulling out of NAB, I mean, the pandemic is a thing, but I think a bigger thing is just the economics of sending a bunch of reps and a bunch of really expensive equipment, to these trade shows around the world. I mean, they pulled out of Photo Plus in 2019 before the pandemic. I think Nikon might have also. I'm not sure about that. I know Sony did. It's just really expensive, and I think they have to wonder at some point, especially since they are able to promote all this new kit electronically, virtually with conferences and such like that, and not to mention all the creators that they can send gear to for testing and review and that kind of thing. It's a different world now than it was like 5 years ago. And I just think probably just dollars and cents. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the bigger companies to participate in these expos. The problem with that, of course, is that the smaller guys get hurt when these big events, can't bring on their big vendors, because then doesn't make much sense to have the expo at all. Then this pays the little guys. So, and of course, we all lose that in terms of the hands-on experience until we get production models showing up in stores for people to go and handle. If you have smaller, or maybe some of the smaller, or the stores themselves can sometimes put on mini expos or participate in local expos and offer hands-on experience that way. But it's not the same thing. Certainly pros, not being a pro, this isn't something that's material to me. I'm sure that pros get a chance to network with each other at these expos, that they won't when they don't have such expos. So it's a loss, but it's not a surprising loss. Going back to the Canon thing, I haven't heard anything. I was at one point intrigued about the R5C, about the rumored high megapixel Canon. We haven't heard anything about that. APS-C, I mean, I'm kind of going back and forth about how much sense that makes, because if you're going to have crop sensor bodies, you need to have crop sensor lenses, and I haven't seen anything on the Canon's lens roadmap that indicates that they're developing small APS-C type lenses, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to have big clunky full frame lenses which most of the RF lenses are, to put them on a small crop body. So I'm thinking more and more that they're less likely to have APS-C bodies, as much as it might make sense to bring people into the fold who would ordinarily be going to maybe to the EFM bodies that they're also looking to apparently discontinue. So.
Well, according to Canon rumors, John, Canon is looking into if there's enough demand for an APS-C R system camera. And that's changed from Canon rumors were saying earlier in the year, where there's 3 cameras coming out. So
right.
I'm just going to...
Yeah.
I'm a dreamer.
The less likely it looks.
I know.
Yeah. I know we got to move on to the topic, but I just wanted to let everybody just give one quick answer to this question. All right. What is the one thing that you hope to hear from all the camera companies that would have been at NAB, and what's the thing that you most likely think will happen? So mine says, I really hope Blackmagic comes out with a new camera and a new body that is more of a box-oriented, full frame. They need a new camera body system, not the Ursas, not the Pockets. I would love to see something new from them. And then the thing that I expect to hear, Canon's going to release cine lenses for the RF lineup.
Magnus?
Myself, actually, I've actually wanted a full frame Blackmagic, now that you bring that up, because you reminded me of that. So a full frame Blackmagic is actually, but like either a pocket or like a square, but have it be full frame is just something that would make it a ton easier. It could be RF if that were even possible. If not, an EF lens mount, and then just release it. I love Blackmagic RAW. I love the Blackmagic's interface, and because I'm mostly a video guy, it would be amazing to see.
Awesome, man. John, final word?
Well, we've already kind of touched on the biggest thing I would want to see is removing that 30-minute limit from the current bodies. And I'm interested to see what technology that's in the R3, such as the eye control autofocus and such, how much of that, if anything, trickles down to future mid-range bodies, like the successor to the R5 Mark II, or R6 Mark II, or whatever else. I'm sure some of that tech will trickle down to those bodies. I'd be looking to see basically what that might be. And certainly just more affordable lenses in the RF lineup, and also some actually what I really want to see is some third-party options, such as especially from Sigma and Tamron, in with RF bodies, because they have to reverse engineer everything, because Canon didn't open their mount to outside developers. So I know that with the RF mount, it's especially tricky to engineer autofocus lenses. Most of the ones that are out there are manual, except for a couple from Samyang and I forget who else. So if you can get like Sigma Art Series lenses and that kind of thing in RF mount, that would be tremendous. You get very high quality, like the ones that Sony has, and for a lot less money. And that might then push Canon to maybe reduce some of its prices on its own lenses, which are hideous. They're great lenses, but they're hideously expensive. So,
all right,
that's what I really want to see.
Well,
yes.
This is what I would like to see. I'd like to start off with, that C300 Mark III? I'd like to see that 8K cinema camera to have much of the capabilities of that camera only offer 8K. I think that'd be terrific. DCI 8K up to 60 frames per second. Then I'd like to see the R5C. I don't think we're going to see the R5C, but that would be nice. And of course, the cherry on top would be a new firmware update for the R5, giving it some of the love that the R3 got, such as, yeah, sure, what the heck? Give us a 6-hour, even a 4-hour record limit. We'll deal with that. Much better than the 30 minutes, which keeps interrupting us when we're trying to do our work. And give us a few other features too. Obviously, you're not going to fix the overheat unless you go inside the camera and, provide us with proper thermals. But now...
Hashtag remove the 30 record limit.
Yeah. Please. All right. And now for our next topic. The number one selling camera in the world right now appears to be the iPhone. Now, the iPhone 13 was just recently announced. It has new optics, a new processor, and an updated imaging engine. Now, this camera is still designed for, it's designed for families. It's designed for regular people. It's designed for those who don't want to have to bother with a camera, who see this as an easy process. Take the picture, take the video, edit it in camera, and then post it to your social media or email it. None of this having to take the card out of the camera, put it into your computer, load it into your photo application, pick which photos you want, fix the photos, save them, then bring them into another application where you can post them onto social media. And video, well, we know that's a whole lot more complicated. The iPhone 13 offered several new improvements, and I was really quite excited. They showed us this film they created. And in this 1-minute film, this was all shot with the iPhone 13. And what I want you to notice here is, yes, these scenes look really good, but I want you to notice when they go behind the scenes, you can see how many people are working putting this together. You can see it's multiple people. They got professional lighting, professional studios. So yes, the only thing here that isn't professional is the actual camera. But still, it produces some really increasing effects. And what Apple announced is a couple of different things. One is they offer very cinematic styles, dramatic, vivid, noir, but then they also added a cinematic mode. And what this does is it takes some things that some of us take a little bit of time practicing, such as focus racking and setting up the camera so that it focuses at just the right speed, and then switching focus from one subject to the other. I want to show you a bit of a clip here where Canon is highlighting this. And look in this video, you can see this character here. The camera's focused on him. Nice, smooth motion. And watch where the focus point is. It'll change from his eyes to his dog very smoothly. And when he comes into frame, he's already in focus. The iPhone can see him coming into the frame and chooses the right focus point. He turns, focus shifts to her. And I think this is really amazing. But you see, there's something else. There's something else that they did here. I have to see this myself. I have to try this out. And it's called focus racking or focus shifting in post. And in this video clip here, I want you to pay close attention here. What they're able to do is they're able to, one, you can select the person who's in focus and you can shift it. But what I find the most amazing part is this depth mapping. Look at this. This is in post. They're changing the focus point. And they changed the focus point. He's far in the background. He isn't up close. That's all done in post. And I think that's impressive. Yes, I agree. We do have to test this out. We need some independent reviews. But I remember back in March, or no, it was November of last year, a lot of us thought, the M1, there's no way it can be that fast. How many YouTube channels have come out and said it isn't? Everyone's come out and said it's incredible. So I do reserve final verdict to actually see it. Now, a few other things that they give us with this camera, it does do ProRes. But the bad news is you need at least 256 gigs, so you're going to have to go with a more expensive unit. And it'll also do Dolby Vision HDR. Now, what Canon said is to be able to do that focus pulling in post, it uses some sort of machine learning and disparity to be able to create a depth map. And, well, depth map sounds really good, but, they told me how they did it. It didn't really tell me how they did it. So starting at $9.99, you're going to have to pay a whole lot more to get the 256 version. And because this is a sealed unit, just like my iPhone, you probably want to go to the 512 gigabyte or the 1 terabyte. And at that point, you're getting awfully close to the A7 III or the new A7 IV price or the R6. So my question to my panelists is, the first question, then I'll ask you some other questions because I want to spend some time on this. Magnus, what do you think of the iPhone 13's video capabilities?
Okay. First and foremost, I'm a Samsung fan, so here's my little Samsung NX1. So I had to pull that off.
Did you take that from the museum?
I have two. I love these things.
But I felt that burn.
Actually, it's not a burn. And I say this sincerely. What Samsung recognized very early on is while, yes, they can make money doing mirrorless and DSLRs, when they looked at how much money they had to invest to get the money out, then they shifted over to their phones and realized, boys, money's in the phones. So
right.
It's not because they couldn't hack it. It's because business-wise, well, look at how well Samsung's phones do. And you can probably comment on that, Magnus. So sorry, I'll give you the floor back.
It's fine. Now, one thing I will say is, and I want to speak specifically to the iPhone, as unbiased as I possibly can be, besides my fanboy status, is
I didn't do that, guys. I did not freeze Magnus.
Update or something. That's what I've heard. I can't confirm whether that's true or not.
Magnus?
So it won't be immediately available.
Sorry,
so,
I have to interrupt. You froze for about 10, 15 seconds, and all we heard was at the end, and that's what I think about that.
Okay. Sorry about that.
But not with an Alabama accent, though. That's all I have to say about that.
So I gave away all my secrets. I'm sorry you missed that. But long story short, the iPhone itself, the fact that they're focusing so much on their cameras, they're the number one camera in the entire world when it comes to usage. So I can see why they're focusing so much on its video capabilities, because you know what? Video is taking over when it comes to social media, when it comes to posting whatever you want to post. Instagram is now more of a video platform than it is a picture sharing platform. So in respect to that, Apple recognizes that, and they're trying to just be next level. It's like other phones can do this, but we can make you look cinematic. But like you showed, Simon, you've got to pay attention to their marketing and the fact that they had so many people working there. They had lights, they had setup, and a lot of these new features, in my personal opinion, have to wait to be tested because not everyone has those perfect conditions. And when you're out there in the field, no matter how amazing these features might be, they might never be used. And the most common feature that will probably be compared to when it comes to other models is, look at how good my picture looks. Oh, let me see your phone. Oh, look at my phone. Oh,
Yeah.
my picture looks better, without understanding any of the technical beef behind it. So I think that's what will make or break the decision. But you know what? Apple's got it. Apple's got its fan base, and the fact that they're introducing more cinematic video
Yeah.
features that we can play with is still something great, especially ProRes. I love ProRes.
Yes. And you know what? When I talked earlier about the video I did of the Crane, not this one here, but the 2 Pro kit, I always want to say Weeble S. So Weeble 2, I get the names mixed up. Go ahead and look at the video before that one, and you'll see at the beginning, it's like, Simon, what the heck are you doing here? This looks garbage. Well, that's because I'm shooting with the iPhone 12. And I'm not here to pick on anybody. I'm not. And Apple's the same. Apple will say this camera isn't designed to replace a DSLR or mirrorless. But I was watching an iJustine video, and she was out in California shooting some great shots, and it looked really, really good. But then she did a pan, and I thought, ooh, what's that? Ooh. It's kind of like when you're filming family photos and one of your uncles or cousins comes down the stairs butt naked. It just ruins it for everybody. And I thought, you know, my next video, I'm going to take my phone into the forest. I'm going to I'm going to keep going. I'm going to ignore that comment. I put it on a stick and I shot my video. And I had great plans to do the entire video using the iPhone. And I checked it against the computer. I got it the best I could. I brought it back. And again, it was shot an hour after sunrise, still early September, but in low light in the forest. So you're really, really pushing it. And when I came back and looked at the computer, I just thought, I think I swore to, and I just said, and my wife said, what? I said, I got to toss it. And then I thought, no, don't toss it, because this is real life. Show people what it's like. And so that my viewers wouldn't realize I don't know what I'm doing, I shot the rest of it with a Canon R5. And you go from that very, very bad noise in the background to crystal sharp. And you can see that. Don't expect this to give you miracles in low light, because it can't. Now, with the still side of this, it performs very well, because on the still side, your shutter, you can make it anything you want. Whereas when your video, you're basically that rule of 180. So if I'm shooting 30 frames per second, I really need to keep it at 160. So there goes my shutter. I can't really have any flexibility there. And then there's my f-stop. Well, because of the sensor size and because of the cropping factor, I'm probably at wide open, at best, f8 with the iPhone. Maybe a little less if I go with the f.9, but not what you expect in low light. Even with the R5, when I'm shooting in low light in the forest, I'm usually anywhere between f1.6 to f3.2. So I've taken a bit of your guys' time there, but now I want to switch it over to John. The iPhone 13, have you tried to do any of your videos using the iPhone 13, and what do you think of the video capabilities of the phone?
Well, actually, I'm another Droid person. My current phone and the one before that have been Google Pixels. I have Pixel 5 now, and I had a Pixel 2 before that. So, I mean, and the Pixel 5 it's a very good camera. It's got the night vision, or night mode, I should say, as the iPhone 13s. And I think the one before that one also had that. But so I personally would, I've used it a little bit, mostly for B-roll, things like that. I've used it for maybe setting up shots that I plan to take with my real camera, because if I want to take something that actually means something to me, I'm going to use one of my real cameras. It's just the way I am, either whether it be photo or video. One thing I do want to point out is, from what I understand, is a lot of stuff. Obviously, there's obviously 4 different iPhone 13s that they put out, and got 2 Pro versions as well as the 2 consumer versions, and the features that you really want, they really want you to buy the most expensive phones, and apparently there's things that they put out in the announcements that they don't really tell you, or that are in the phones that they don't really tell you. Like, I was watching F-Stopper's video today, and one thing he talked about, and one of my lights just died, which is
no, run with it. I like that. What does Apple call it? They call it the cool noir. I like it.
Okay,
Run
I
with
don't.
it.
Okay, I'll have to check
I think
how I
with
set that setup.
simultaneously
It's
mine's
actually
right as
plugged
well.
into the AC, so I'm not sure why it cut off because the thing is up. But anyway, I've lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, so the cinematic mode. One thing that apparently isn't mentioned in the announcement is that apparently that records in 1080, not 4K. So I don't know how. So I probably if they put it in 4K, maybe then you'll see more artifacts and such because all that defocus or that bokeh is really just is AI. It's not real. So you might see more artifacts if they had it in a higher resolution. That's just actually that's not my thought. That's the f-stopper the guy's thought, and I have to agree with that. It seems it's logical. So I'm sure there's other things there, too. That again, you need to see more real life use to find out how good it really is.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point because I'm putting the video up again. When you look at this, you can't help but go, "Wow, this is incredible." But again, as Magnus said, is behind the scenes you have a full crew. The only thing difference is instead of having a red camera, they're using an iPhone. They've got an Oscar-winning director doing this. Of course, they're going to get everything set up and the lighting. These people know how to work in low light situations. So. And I love one of the comments. Who is it said? Jesse said, Apple fanboys cut you off. And that's why I sort of burst out laughing behind the scenes because, I am an Apple fanboy. I'm a Canon fanboy, Sony. I just love technology. But, a glass of salt water, you got to be careful because otherwise you're going to find yourself picking technology that, you're going to have buyer's remorse. So always focus on the capabilities you want. Watch the reviews. And if there's nothing wrong with an R5, an R6, a Sony A6100, or an iPhone 13, but you want to get the technology that works for you. And if you don't want to have to fiddle with multiple devices, something that can fit in your pocket, you don't have to worry about forgetting your camera, then you can probably produce some really good results with these cameras that you're going to be happy with. John's fixing his light. Any other comments on the iPhone 13? I just lost my screen here, so we're all losing stuff.
Well, I guess I'll go. What I was gonna just say, I guess I'll give my backstory first. So I started off in Samsung. I was up to the Galaxy S7, I think, or no, S8. I was at the S8. Then I switched to LG to the LG V30, and now I'm on the iPhone 11 right now. I'm not an Apple fan. I just fit the need that I needed in terms of a phone. I will say this in terms of the iPhone 13, Apple, you guys at first had my curiosity, but now you have my attention. I think you guys hit a nail. I think this is just something I just brought up before with the GoPro. It's another tool, and they're great at marketing. They are very great at the marketing, but I think everybody's hit the head. It's like you can always get nice, great shots. It's like, wow, this looks amazing. Yeah, you got Academy Award-winning cinematographers and DPs. Unfortunately, most of us are not. I would love to be an Academy Award-winning DP. I'm not, but and not everybody's gonna have the resources of an Academy Award-winning DP. So there's definitely a lot of marketing ahead, and I think there's a cautionary tale. Having said all that, I do believe this brings me back to a time when I went to my wife's country, and then we took a trip to Ghana, and we went to this beach, this is when the Pocket 4K just came out, and I took it over there to just grab stuff and film, and it was a great time. But we got to this beach in Ghana, and they basically said I can't enter because of my pocket camera, because I have a professional camera.
Yes, of course.
But I could take my phone and film stuff on my phone. And now we're getting to a point where it's like, man, this announcement sort of brings me back to like all these times where you get into space where you may not, and this is the benefit of iPhone, again, another tool for creators, where you can go and capture stuff that you may not necessarily be able to get with larger cameras, with a R5 or a C70. It draws too much attention. It's like it's a phone. It's the most inconspicuous video camera, and now it's going with capabilities of ProRes, even with the higher price tags of getting that 512 or terabyte storage space, you can make an argument like you can use this to go out in places where you may not necessarily get, and go travel and get unique video and sell, or photos, sell them on stock footage, and recoup your money that way. We're in an age where there's so many ways where you can really give yourself some funds, and ways, and you can do it on simply something as an iPhone. It's great.
No, that's really good. I want to shift just a little bit of a pivot here. We're going to stay on Apple, but I know many of you out there are thinking about getting one of those M1 MacBooks or MacBook Airs or Mac Minis. And I know a friend of mine, Stop the FOMO, just recently picked up one of those Mac Minis for his family, but he's also going to play around with it. Now, me and James have talked about this. James uses DaVinci Resolve, an excellent NLE, and I use Final Cut. Now, when I'm using Final Cut on this M1 MacBook Air, again, 7 cores, only 8 gigs of RAM, if you can believe that, 8 gigs, I am able to edit 8K all iVideo, provide effects, balancing, let's say about 5 or 6 effects. It doesn't drop a frame. And I don't know how it's possible it can do this. But I know this isn't for me. The screen's too small. I want something like a 27-inch screen or a MacBook 16 at the very least. I need that screen display. And you know what? I know what I'm able to do with 8 gigs, but I just wouldn't feel right if I didn't have at least 32 gigs of RAM. So I'm waiting to see what this MacBook Pro 2021 is going to be like. And I want to get each of your opinions on it. Let me know what you shoot with. Sorry, not what you shoot with, what you edit with your own Windows or Mac. But let me just give you all a quick update on what we're getting with this MacBook Pro. So I'll bring up the screen here with all the details. If I can find it. I've already closed off Apple, but here we go. The Apple MacBook Pro is supposed to be hitting the shelves in the next several weeks, and this is according to Mark Gurman. And he's one of those analysts on Wall Street that seems to have a pretty good hit. Now, this came out on Sunday before Tuesday. So I thought maybe we might get something, but they also said that don't expect anything for Tuesday. Apple has dropped products before without doing any fanfare. The site's down for an hour or two, the stuff is up there. But this is going to be kind of a big deal. They're going to be introducing processors that are going to help feed into the Mac Pro. So, I'm curious. I do use Apple. I'm kind of locked into Final Cut because I like it. It works for me. As an ordinary filmmaker, it's perfect. I know it isn't there for everybody, as I'm sure James will tell us. But I like it, and I like that I can edit on my lap without this thing overheating. It's just truly remarkable what it can do. So who I'm going to pick on first? I'm going to pick on Magnus because I know, Magnus, you don't use Apple, do you?
No, I do not use Apple. Now, Apple, I believe, is one of, if not the best types of hardware to use when it comes for editing. But I also believe that and this is kind of an old feeling, is that they've been overpriced for years when it comes to the hardware they delivered. And M1, they started a revolution, especially with video editing.
Yeah.
So that has piqued my interest. But I'm an Adobe Creative Cloud person. I edit with Adobe Premiere Pro CC. I also dabble in DaVinci Resolve, but predominantly I'm in Adobe. And I do believe that the DaVinci Resolve experience, when it comes to playback, editing, and outputting, is much faster.
Yeah.
Much faster.
Yeah.
So my preference for Adobe is simply comfortability. But I still dabble in between editing systems. But one important thing I really want to say when it comes to this subject is that if you're editing on a PC and wondering what you need in order to be able to edit, like you do, 8K files, it's more than just the processor. It's more than just the video card. It's the whole build. Yep. It's using SSDs instead of regular hard disks. It's making sure you have enough RAM. All of that matters. But I do believe that you can get that to an affordable price where you can edit 8K pretty comfortably. I edit 8K RAW directly from the R5 on Adobe Premiere with 0 dropped frames. 0 dropped frames. And I don't have to, and they're not ProRes files, because ProRes files will make it easier to edit on a Mac. Mm-hmm. But I don't have to have, for example, an Atomos Ninja to record and get ProRes. I don't need that. I record directly to the R5 and can edit 8K
That's true.
smoothly. And I have a couple of videos on that on my channel where I show you that. So small plug. But
So
yeah,
check out his channel and subscribe.
Yes, my opinion is each platform has its advantages and disadvantages. But the number one reason besides the video editing that I stick to PC is I like gaming too, and PC is where it's at.
Yeah, we talked about this in the pre-show, how I got so tired of blowing away the registry or creating problems. This is back with Windows 95 that I decided to just go consoles for gaming and Windows. I think I switched over to Windows NT and the Windows 2000 because, the driver problems back then. But anyhow, so let's go over to James. James, what do you edit on? And also, what do you think of these new MacBooks?
Okay. I'm going to just let you guys know. I have a lot to. I'm going to try to keep it as minimum because of recent experience.
So 20 minutes in?
No, so here we go.
Yep. All right. So what I edit on, my main editing is, I just brought it in frame a little bit. It's this laptop. It is a PC. It is a Gigabyte Aerial OLED 15 laptop. And I use this. I edit DaVinci Resolve exclusively unless I'm on a job like I was this past week. But I'm pretty much in DaVinci Resolve. And like Magnus, I shoot R5, AK RAW on the R5, and no playback issues. Especially if you just render the files, and the rendering is really fast because, like he talks about, it's all about the process. It's not just about the process, it's about everything. This has 64 gigs of RAM. It has terabyte SSDs. It has a 20. It doesn't even have like the most craziest graphics card. It's like a 20. I think it's like a 2017 graphics card, like NVIDIA QX Supermax Q, and then an i7 core processor. Nothing too crazy, and it's $2,500. Let's get on this M1 stuff right now, okay?
Here we go.
Because I literally have just spent a week editing, doing post-work and color grading on an M1 iMac, brand new one, and it's right now it has the most amount you can have, which is 16 gigs.
Yeah.
And we we were editing in Premiere, and then we were doing color grading in Resolve. I'm not going to try to go too much because the production is still in works. All I will say is literally almost every 20 minutes, there was like points where it's like literally almost 20 minutes crash because we ran out of memory in Premiere. Resolve, you ran out of memory. You got to close the program. I like the fact that they're like, it's one of the things that always bothered me, even with the I'm really intrigued by the iPhone, but the one thing that always bothered me about Apple is the fact that they feel they know what my workflow is better than me. Don't worry, we got you. Just do what we do.
Well, there's a caveat. You have to have their hardware and software.
Yeah,
right.
Just do it how we want you to do it, and you will be fine. And that doesn't work for me. And it's just, they got it. You need more RAM. You need at least 64 gigabytes of RAM. And for the amount you pay, like I'm pretty sure that iMac was like, it was in the upper end. And this is $2,500, and it plays back 8K RAW smoothly.
James, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Have you tried using Final Cut Pro on Mac? What do you think?
I mean, I've used Final Cut. Yeah, I have used Final Cut Pro. Look, it's all, if you're in the Mac, if you're completely in the Apple ecosystem, then the M1s are great. And even honestly, even on DaVinci Resolve, to a certain extent, the M1 is actually pretty good, but most people are still on Premiere, and Premiere is still very heavily dependent on your memory. And I like Final Cut. It's okay, but honestly, it has that Apple of, we know what's best for you. It doesn't give me the control like Resolve and even Premiere, which I can't stand. I can't stand Premiere. But yeah, in terms of this, if they're not at least giving at least 32 gigabytes of RAM, in terms of unless you're just purely in Final Cut, to me it's kind of pointless.
And that's a very good point. And this is where I want you to see different perspectives and different setups. And I'm so glad that hearing that we all have a different setup. And I agree with James. First of all, I think that DaVinci Resolve is one of the top 2 NLEs out there for the ordinary filmmaker. If you're getting into industry, that's very different. And you know, James is. What I have noticed with the M1, everything I say about the video performance is using Final Cut Pro. As an ordinary filmmaker, I'm a one-person crew. I don't need to share files with anybody. That's what I'm using. And you might think, well, I'm probably only doing short videos of 15 or 20 minutes. I have a project on this 4 terabyte SSD. It's currently about 2.2 terabytes long. Time-wise, it's 1 hour and 33 minutes long. The video's coming out of the R5. It is ProRes, as James said. When I'm recording in the Ninja, it automatically gives me ProRes, but it is giving me ProRes, and it's 4K, all I, 30 frames per second. And, you know, I can edit a large file like that. I never get out of memory things. And this is a good point. As James says, if you're staying within that Apple ecosystem, Final Cut on the M1s, it is staggering fast, never any out of memory problems, and I'm always working on those large files. I don't know how they're doing. I don't know what sort of evil magic they're doing behind the scenes to make it happen. But if you're doing DaVinci Resolve on an M1 Mac, then yeah, you know, the normal rules apply. If you're doing 4K video, you really should. And if you're on Windows, Linux, if you're doing 4K video, you should have 32 gigs. If you're going north, you should have 64. And when I say you should have 32 or 64, that should be your floor. All right, let's turn over to John. John, what do you think about these computers?
I'm another Windows user. I've got a Windows 10 PC that I've had for about a year, and I edit on, well, in terms of video, I edit that on DaVinci also, which I got first the free version and have since upgraded to the Pro version. But I didn't want to. I do my photo editing in in Adobe, Lightroom and Photoshop. I didn't want to have another subscription on top of those two, so that's why I got the free DaVinci when I first wanted to get into video. And having just paid once for the Pro version, that's fine with me. And I find that program very easy. I struggled to learn, say, Photoshop, and knowing that Premiere is built on a similar architecture to Photoshop, I think I chose wisely to go with DaVinci. And one thing in terms of the Mac, I mean, one of the reasons I've always used PCs. I mean, I use PCs at work. I mean, I worked for 40 years, with the federal government, and they always used PCs for the last decade and a half or couple of decades that we've had computers. It's been Windows, and obviously some of them up until the most recent one, Windows 10 it's been very stable. Everything before that, could go down almost any time, but you never know. But I'm pretty happy with Windows 10. And the thing is that with the PC, I was able to upgrade it. I mean, this machine I bought, it came with 16 RAM. I upgraded it myself to 80. I could swap out I've got a good graphic card. I could upgrade that. I could upgrade it. I could add another hard drive if I want. There's a lot of things I could do with this computer that I couldn't do with a Mac, because it's you get what you want. You get what they have, and if you want something upgraded, you're looking at another machine.
Unless you spend 10 grand.
And for a lot less money than I just spent with a Mac.
You will get less and you will love it.
What's that?
I said you will take less and you will love it.
Exactly. Yeah. Take less and love it. So, I'm happy. So I'm happy with the system that I have. I'm glad it's upgradable and configurable to the way I want it. And there we go.
And I got to say that though I've been in the Mac system since Vista, and that's why I did it. I was on Commodore, then I moved to Windows, and I left Windows when Vista came out, because I always spent about $3,000 on a computer. And my view is that Windows doesn't always. This is going back 10, 15 years ago, and I always said that Windows doesn't always suck. What happens is if you buy these computers with bloatware on it, and you just don't have enough RAM and everything, it's not going to work. What you need sufficient memory. You need good memory. What is it? Bit flipping. Bit flipping. If you have ECC memory, for example, you don't have to worry about bit flipping. Bit flipping is an error that occurs when, as the sun's radiation hits our atmosphere, it splits into many different particles, and once in a while, those particles will hit a computer, and it'll hit a chip, and it'll disrupt it, and it'll cause it to crash or do any number of things. This is a pretty common thing. Now, it depends. If you have like 256 megabytes, it could be happening once every second. And depending on the memory that's flipped, it doesn't affect anything. And they've shown this. This actually happened with planes. Planes all of a sudden started to do a nosedive. And when they looked at the flight recorder, they realized that one of the bits changed automatically for no apparent reason. They realized it was likely due to bit flipping. So ECC solves bit flipping. So that's why some people pay extra for ECC memory. But you also want good processors. You want good processors that can work with good GPUs. You want to have the right data pathways. You need to have the right SSD readers or the adapters between the storage and your main bus. Otherwise, what's the point of having this super fast M2 SSD if you're hitting a slow bus speed? It's just so many things working together. You need to spend a good amount of money. So I love the different opinions. I switched over to Mac because of Vista. It was one of those where my boss said to me at the time, he says, "What are you going to do, go Mac?" And I went, "Yeah, maybe I will." I was just so tired of Vista at the time, and everybody at the time was saying, this was when it was just came out, and I needed a new computer then, and that's why I ended up with Mac, not because I thought it was the best. So if you're kind of on the fence, you're not sure what to go with, again, make it a capability-based discussion. What do you want? What results do you want out of what you produce? Are you going to be editing in 4K or 8K? What kind of files are you going to be working? They'll be coming out of the Canon R5, or you're dealing with 8K RAW files. And any of these gentlemen here that are, if you want to ask them any questions, you want to subscribe to the channel and drop a comment to them later, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to give you more details on their setups. I think DaVinci Resolve has got to be one of the best out there. And you know what? I'll be honest with you. Yeah. I might very well have DaVinci Resolve right now if it wasn't for the fact in 2015, I think it was, when I was looking at getting an LE. It was anything but Adobe because I couldn't afford it, and it was so slow and buggy at the time. And Blackmagic was just color correction. Well, I shouldn't say just. It did an awesome job at color correction and balancing and all that post work, but it wasn't an NLE. So also, if you're not sure what to get, as I said, DaVinci Resolve is free. There are some limitations, like it's 8-bit, but it's free. Play around with it, and you know what? I think it's terrific.
Yeah, Pro version is 10-bit.
Yes.
Best NLE of the three, in my opinion.
And you're entitled to your opinion, even if it's wrong. And no, James is a friend of mine. I like joking with him. Honestly, I think DaVinci Resolve and Final Cut are really amazing platforms for the ordinary filmmaker. Both of them top out at $299. And if I think that really matters. I paid $299 back in 2015. I haven't paid a cent since, and I think the same goes for Blackmagic as well.
Right.
Yep, pretty much the same.
That's good.
And I have to defend Premiere. It's
better now.
It may not be everybody's favorite, but it's amazing with its capabilities when you know how to use it and what you can do with it.
They have recently, in the last year or so, they've dramatically improved the performance of it. Yeah, it's Correct. Much better. Yeah. All right. And now for our next topic. We don't often talk about our friends over at Nikon, but here we go. That's not Nikon. Where's my Nikon one? Okay, never mind. We're not going to talk. My bad. We're not going to talk about Nikon right now. We're actually going to talk about a purchase that Canon made. Here we go. Let me roll that slide. This is why you should always be prepared. So Canon made an acquisition this week. They purchased Redland Technologies for $341 million. Now, I had trouble actually finding this company. First of all, a lot of the news referred to it as a Central Saanich company, and actually, that's just a region. It's a township. Central Saanich is in British Columbia, Canada, or in a town of Saanich, BC. This company, Redland Technologies, is a 200-plus employee company that focuses on manufacturing advanced medical imaging equipment, and they're currently working on the next generation of CT scanning equipment. None of us here are surprised that Canon, Nikon, Sony, well, the whole mirrorless and DSLR market knows that things are shrinking. This year, it's projected to reach a total worldwide shipped units of 7.1 million. So let's say a total of 7 million sales this year. That's down from 2011 at a height of something like, 14, 15, or 21 million. Everyone's aware that it's shrinking. And the problem for a publicly traded company is, how do you grow earnings in a shrinking market? Sure, you can do what Sony and Canon are doing and produce better and better cameras and update firmware to make those better and better cameras better and better. But you have to grow in multiple ways. So if you can't grow in your segment because it's declining, well, then you have to do it through either A, acquisitions, or by verticals or horizontals. And Canon they already have a place in imaging. They do copiers, which, because of everybody working from home, is suffering. But they do have some experience in medical imaging equipment. So I think this is a really good acquisition. I think it has synergies. And $314 million, it's not a very big purchase. So let's turn this over to our panel and see what you guys think of this. John, I'd like to pick on you first because you just put your hand up.
Yeah, in my understanding about this purchase, it is mainly that this company makes microprocessors specifically for the imaging industry, which, as you said, is actually a very large division. You know, the agency that I used to work for, a federal agency, they use Canon copiers and have for many years. Now, how much of this? Now the question is now with all the chip shortage and stuff. Obviously, that certainly answers the problem for them in terms of getting chips for their their copiers and for their medical imaging equipment, et cetera. What will any of that trickle down to the consumers in the camera line? Kind of doubt it. I don't think. Well, I think they're totally different chips, from what I understand. But whether they could or would remission any of that business over to the camera line is another story, because it would be nice if they could, simply because all indications are the microprocessor shortage is going to continue for at least another year, maybe two, before that really straightens up. And that's obviously is already impacting multiple industries. So I think it's kind of an interesting thing, but in terms of its effect on us as photographers and filmmakers, I don't know if this really matters a whole heck of a lot.
No, to us it matters not at all, but to the future of Canon it certainly does. Canon was already dating this company. They had a 15% position in the company. Right. And this week they decided to get married and taking on not like a majority position. They bought it wholly 100%. Right. So it's marriage.
That's just what happened.
Don't just date, marry, right? That's what Canon did. Magnus, you got a great smile going on there. So what do you think of this acquisition? What does it mean to you?
I think it makes sense because Canon, unlike Nikon, Canon is diversified their business. Nikon focuses mostly on just cameras, but Canon, one of Canon's main producers is really the medical imaging industry. That industry is huge, and in fact, it brings in a lot of profitability and a lot of money. So for them to be investing in the medical industry, like with this company and the acquisition, it makes a lot of sense. You want to continue to diversify what brings you the most revenue, and of course, just gobble up the market. And a lot of companies have done that. I've seen a number of acquisitions take place within the past couple of years because companies really want to consolidate certain industries and really just kind of dominate the market. And Canon just seems to be following suit, at least when it comes to medical imaging, because quite honestly, everyone knows that the camera business is contracting. Now, it's not going to go away because there are several opportunities that you still currently have with the fact that we all are doing business remotely, for example. So cameras can be a one leg up to really kind of show your presence when it comes to things like live streams or live conferences that we're all doing. However, if you want to go where really the business is growing, you have to go to the medical industry. And I think this was a smart move by Canon.
Thank you very much. And James, agree, disagree? What are your thoughts?
I agree with both. Very short and simple. The most successful people and the most successful companies diversify and have different streams of income. And Canon's just doing that. That's about it with me.
Okay. Well, that's it for that. I didn't expect us to spend half an hour on that news story. Let's move on to our next one. Nikon has coming out with a new FTZ adapter, a Mark II if you would like. Now, we don't know too much about it. We know that it's a redesigned body, and most likely that notch that you see there is going to be gone. Now, what could this new adapter do? Well, the Mark I was noticeably slower at autofocus than using native glass. But accuracy is pretty good. And I think where Nikon has an opportunity here, if they can improve upon those issues that it had with the first one, if you can improve upon the speed of the autofocus, I think they're going to have a hit here. One of the things I noticed is when I got the adapter for, do I have it right here? Yeah, this is the EF to RF adapter. As soon as I put this on and I put my EF lenses on the R5, I didn't notice anything. And that's what Nikon customers want. They want an FTZ adapter that doesn't have any sort of issues. They don't want the autofocus to be slower. I mean, why would you? So I think it'd be really great. But there's also one other news story I want to bring in here. So let me go back to the Nikon FTZ adapter and bring up the story about a new Nikon. So this is according to Petapixel. Nikon is focusing on a mid to high-end camera. Sorry, that's not correct. I know it's not a mid to high-end, so probably when I pasted everything down here, I forgot to remove that. It's meant to be an entry-level camera. Now, this is going to be a video-centric camera, and it's most likely going to come out in the first half of 2022. And their primary purpose here is to attract young customers. What I'm kind of thinking is this is going to be something that's going to, well, it should. If it wants to do well, it needs to aim at the same market with the same capabilities as the ZV-1 or the ZV-E10. I'm pretty impressed with those cameras. I think they work very, very well. I would be more than happy. If I was starting out doing a YouTube channel, I would have no problems using a ZV-1, for example. Even though the new one comes out, I still like the old one. I still like that camera. The way Sony's are able to allow you to go from an area where the exposure is very different to an area in bright and still focus on the subject, realizing, okay, let's see if I can work as best of a miracle as I can to keep the subject exposed properly. And I just really like that about Sony cameras. So I think Nikon could potentially have a hit here. What we do notice from sales figures coming out of Amazon, the cameras that sell the most are not the high-end R5s, R1s, or R3s, alphas. They're the cameras that are priced around that $1,000 mark. They seem to do the best. Now, one other thing, the Nikon Z 40mm f2 lens was also announced, and that is available for pre-order. So now let's turn this over to my panel, and I'm going to start off with you, John. There's a lot to unpack here. We have a new Nikon entry-level camera that's supposed to be coming out. We have an adapter, the FTZ adapter, that, well, leaves some Nikon fans frustrated. And of course,
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. So, I mean, one thing I know. I mean, I'm a Canon shooter, so I've not having used the Nikons or the adapters or whatever. All I know is basically what they say. What all I know is what I read in the newspapers to paraphrase, whoever it was. But I know one thing about that adapter is, it's got that I guess it's like a tripod mount, whatever, and actually projects below the bottom of the camera, which made, as I understand it, using the camera on a tripod is really difficult unless you used the tripod mount on the adapter, which then, of course, depending on the lens or the body, could put strain on the mount that you don't really want. So it seems like some logical redesign of that adapter, and hopefully, if it does actually work smoother, because as we know, those of us who use Canons and have used the EF to RF adapter know how smoothly that works with EF glass. So hopefully Nikon is getting it right. Yeah. Now, of course, they still have to get their autofocus system generally with their models, up to the level of where Canon and Sony is. But that's another story. But at least it should work as well with the F mount lenses as with the Z mount lenses. Other than that, in terms of the entry level camera, well, again, Nikon needs all the new users they can get. So if they can get a new body in there that actually draws, that draws people in to their ecosystem, the better for them and better for the industry as a whole.
Some people will take Sony to task because at the end of every full frame lens, or at the end of every lens, they have this adapter that's built in. And people will make fun of that. And, I don't understand why. One of the nice things about the Sony E-mount is, and I get it, it was designed for APS-C, but it doesn't matter whether you have a full frame or an APS-C, those lenses will work. You just have to deal with a different focal range. But for other companies such as Canon and Nikon, yeah, an adapter is important. So very, very good commentary, John. James, your thoughts?
So in terms of the adapter, I think hopefully we do see some improvements on the autofocus as John talked about. I need to see something very. In terms of adapters, like Red and Canon are starting to spoil me. So with what they're coming out with, like Canon with its variable NDs, its focal reducer, now Red is producing a PL electronic ND adapter as well. So, if it gets to just a simple adapter and just, okay, the autofocus better, that's cool, but and that's great that they've addressed those issues, but they have a whole lot of catching up to do. And
their lens lineup sucks.
And now to that potential camera, like ZV-1 Sony style camera. Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't the ZV-1 a compact point and shoot?
It is a compact size. I honestly, I haven't looked at it in a while, so old man memory, I'm having trouble remembering if it's a fixed lens. I believe it is a fixed lens.
I believe it is. I think so.
Yeah.
It's not an ILC.
So my issue with that is it's a 1-inch sensor. Yeah, because I know it was a 1-inch sensor.
Right.
It's this. Like, you got Nikon's coming with a compact 1-inch style, potentially 1-inch style camera. Like, yeah, that's cool and nice, but if I got something like this that's slightly smaller than 1 inch, but it can still take great photos and great stills. I can edit everything right there on the phone, upload it right there without much issue. I personally, and this is not to talk, this is not at Nikon directly. This is just the compact, the compact market in general. I don't see where its benefits are in terms of a smartphone, especially with the newer cameras that have the multiple different lens options that you get with them. And the ability to just do everything right there on the smartphone. What if it's Samsung? What if it's iPhone? They're all delivering qualities that compete with the image quality, because you're not getting that much benefit. It would be different if it was an APS-C sensor or a full frame sensor where you can clearly see the difference in those underlids. You're not really seeing that difference. So I don't have much hope for that.
So James, one thing I noticed is you're starting to lift up the hood. You're getting into that engine and that carburetor. Me, I try to stay at the conceptual level. When I look at the ZV-1, I look at the capabilities of it. I don't really care about the sensor size. But now that you brought it up, and I want to sort of take this to Magnus, and then James, if you want to come back and comment on it. For that $1,000 point that I mentioned, there's no reason, and I get it, that's more than the ZV-1, but there's no reason that Nikon couldn't release a sub-$1,000 camera with either an APS-C or full frame. Nikon has an opportunity here to aim at young consumers that don't need these 4K 60, don't need a lot of these advanced features, but give them something that does their use cases very, very well. And yes, I think it should at least be an APS-C. And one thing I think the APS-C works well in is if you're going to be working in relatively low light, it does really, really well. And in bright light, it works really, really well too. And once you start to go into full frame, then you need to really start to look at variable ND filters, because you're going to get too much light in open sunlight. Like if I take the R5 outside on a bright sunny day and I got my 24-105 and I don't have a filter, I'm at f22 and I cannot shoot less than an f22. And that's the problem with full frame. Now, if I had my Canon 70D or a 90D and I had a similar lens, I would have more flexibility. I don't think that camera needs full frame. I think an APS-C type sensor would work. But Magnus, I see you smiling, nodding a little bit and going, Tell us. Don't hold back. What do you think? What do you really, really think?
Well, my thoughts, honestly, are really in this particular market. For example, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that the Sony ZV-E10 was an APS-C sensor. I could be wrong on that, but I was
Yeah,
pretty
I
sure
think
that
so.
they increased the sensor size from the Sony ZV-1. And it also brought in a lot of great features for vloggers to really kind of automatically make it easy for them to give them that shallow depth of field, use the camera, make it do everything for them, and just not have to worry. However, I believe that Nikon has a particular advantage in this point, and I'll tell you why. Nikon in itself and its brand name, when somebody sees you with a Nikon or a Canon, they recognize those brands as camera brands. So when they see someone walk in with a Nikon, they're going to say, hey, wow, that's a nice camera, without knowing anything about it. And I'm sure you guys have seen this before out there when you're shooting. Someone who knows nothing about what you're doing will say, that's a nice camera,
Yes.
without knowing
Hmm.
having a clue.
Hmm.
And a lot of people get excited with that. So when they buy a Nikon, they're going to get that type of response. So that is an advantage that Nikon will have. And if they come into the market with an APS-C or a full frame at that price point and make it great for vloggers, I think that you do have a high chance of actually doing well. I will say this though, and this is kind of offshoots to Canon. With Canon's expected launch of their, really low priced full frame camera, I get the feeling that it's almost like Canon doesn't want to release anything smaller than full frame anymore, and then
Mm,
get people to
Right.
go just to upgrade their cameras and realize the benefits of full frame. And if they can design it in
I
an
agree.
inexpensive price point, Canon's going to kind of stand out from the competition from an entry level position when it comes to the pictures that people can take. So
Yeah.
I would imagine that Nikon's going to go for a larger sensor too, because they see that happening and they're going to want to have their place in the market. So that's my opinion.
And it
that's a
was,
good point. And I see John nodding too. So, John, what do
Yeah.
you?
No, I mean that's the point I was making, before in
Yeah.
terms of the conjecture about Canon introducing APS-C, bodies. I mean, the more I look at it, the less reason I see for them to do it, especially since I don't see any sign of them developing lenses that would go with a crop body. So, no, I totally agree with Marcus on that point.
yeah, yeah, and Mangus, the ZE
Magnus,
10
excuse me.
is APS. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
it is an APS-C and interchangeable. I was just
yeah,
talking about in terms of compact, like a compact fixed.
right.
If it's an interchangeable APS-C, then yes, it's an interesting. I will say that does change the conversation.
Okay.
Now,
Well, great.
doesn't that camera have like a 28 millimeter equivalent lens also, which I think was one of the knocks against it in terms of their marketing it as a vlogging camera, but having a relatively long
Yeah.
lens rather than something that more like a 24 or a 20 or a 16 equivalent.
Not wide enough. I agree. Yeah.
Right,
Exactly.
yeah.
You just need like a 20-foot pole.
Right.
Yep. I do want to bring up a few comments from the field. I think it was Randy who said that the Nikon ZFC, it's the Nikon ZFC is a top-selling Nikon camera right now. So they did definitely get something right with that one. But now I want to move on to the last subject with 2 minutes left. I told you, Magnus, I can manage the time effectively,
Yeah,
even though I had
yeah.
plenty of stories to cover. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the Fuji GFX. Don't worry, this won't take long. This is just give you some dates. So I do have this. My source provided me with a photo. I can't show you that because I don't want to get my source in trouble. But on October the 21st, 2021, the GFX 50S Mark II will be available for sale, along with the XT30 Mark II, the XT3 USB charger, the XF 33mm f1.4 RLMWR. And a little bit later, on November the 30th, 2021, the GF 35 to 70mm, along with the XF 23mm f1.4 RLMWR, will be on sale. So I love it when people provide me with stuff and I've got proof. It's out there. So for those of you looking at getting it, you don't have to wait too much longer. So, guys, with a minute left, that takes us to everything I had scheduled to cover off on this live stream. And I promise you, you wouldn't have to stay more than 2 hours. But, James did say he wanted to talk about something else. And before I give him the time, I just want to say a special thanks to you watching at home for supporting. Today, we've got 35 thumbs up and only 2 thumbs down. I was hoping to get at least 5 of those. So if you're still watching and you haven't given us a thumbs up or thumbs down, go ahead. And if you really don't like it,
interaction is good interaction.
Exactly. And if you give me thumbs down, go ahead and press it twice. Give me double the thumbs down.
I did there.
Thank you. I want to say special thanks to Magnus for his first time coming on the show. Magnus, you've been a delight. You're very photogenic. It's taken me a long time to get photogenic, and here you just burst onto the scene doing well. Your channel has been out for about 2 years, about the same as me, and you're approaching 16,000 subscribers. So I encourage everyone, take a look at Magnus's channel. He's got a great channel. Subscribe, like his content, and I thank you for showing up. But I also thank James again. James, you're becoming a regular. I always love your viewpoint, and Kippy was going to be on here, but when I realized that you could make it at the last minute, your knowledge of the cinematics, the C70s, your different viewpoints, I knew where you were going to go, and I know I needed that viewpoint to counterpoint mine and some of the others. So it's always a pleasure having you, and you've got that C70 filming right now. Awesome work. And John.
Thank you very much.
Another regular, I think this is your 3rd time. Thank you so much for coming out. This is a great Friday. Really is. I'm having a lot of fun doing this. And I think I'm going to go ahead and keep doing this the following month. I tried it for a month trial with Ecamm, and I got to tell you, this is working for me. As you saw in this video, I know James, Magnus, and John don't see this, but the ability for me to do video overlays, if I start talking about a camera, queuing it up and doing all that, really helps add a bit more to what we're talking about. The problem is, because I have so many slides and so many videos, that sometimes I press the wrong button. And how I've got it set up on my screen is all the effects. So if I switch from this to a large one of me like this, I'm using the command key and the numbers 1 through 9. Then I use the control key 1 through 9. And then I use the number keys 1 through 9, depending on what I'm trying to queue up. And I have a laptop here with some notes on it on what to press. But every now and then I hit the wrong key, and instead of talking about Nikon, we're talking about a Canon purchase. So again, I saw a few more likes come in. Look, thanks a lot. I appreciate you spending your Friday with me talking about things that we really enjoy very much. So I'd like to go around the room, a chance to do some, actually those colors do look, I think I'm going to keep these colors. They actually kind of look nice when I see myself on a bigger screen. That looks not half bad. And this gets shaved off tomorrow. I'm looking a little bit like I'm from the backwoods of Canada. So let's take it from the top. Magnus, final words?
First of all, I'd like to thank you for your kind words. I mean, I really was honored to be here with you guys. James, John, I've seen your content before being on this, and you guys know I've commented on your videos, and James in particular, you've commented on mine as well. So it's nice to actually finally be all together and be able to have this conversation with everyone watching as well. Thank you guys as well. I'm totally honored, and yeah, I would love to come back too if I'm invited, because this was a good time.
Well, you know what? If you want to, seriously, do you want to come back next Friday?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. I'll put you down for next Friday, and to let you know, next Friday, unless something crazy happens, Stop the FOMO is going to be joining us for the first hour. And Stop the FOMO, he has a channel all about televisions and, but Stop the FOMO behind the scenes, he's always on my channel. He's always talking about camera gear. And so he's the perfect person to talk to as well. So Magnus will have you back with Stop the FOMO for the first hour. So
great.
You did well. And thanks for being on the channel.
Thank you.
James, final words.
Final words is definitely, it's always a great pleasure. I love these types. If you guys haven't been to Magnus's channel, you have to check it out. He does. I've been a fan of his channel for quite some time, and he does great topics and some comedic ones. Comedic sketches. I love his comedic sketches. Please definitely go check
Thank
out
you.
and support this channel. It's a great comment, and also go check out John's uh, channel as well, and give him some support. And then, of course, you guys can always check out my channel, James Jackson Films, if you want to learn more about film and video productions. As always, love being here.
Awesome. And do you want to join us next week, or do you want to let me know a little later in the week?
As of right now, yes, I'm. Look, if it's a Friday and I'm available, I'm here. So
All right.
I'm ready. I'm always ready.
I'm not used to confirming things live on the air, so we have Magnus, we have James. Perfect. It makes my life a little easier. And John, last but certainly not least, or did I already talk to you? See, I'm starting to lose my mind again.
No, I just want to again thank you and thank the rest of the panel. This has been a really great interactive group, and I have to say that this is, I mean, your outreach to me and to the other panelists and other people who are going to be on this show and have been on this show before is something that's really unique in the YouTube community. And the fact that you're really doing as much as you can to build the community, give back to the community is something that I certainly appreciate. And I'm sure the rest of you will join me in that sentiment. So I certainly look forward to seeing what the new panelists who come up next week and in future shows. And I just appreciate the opportunity to showcase myself and to also just be able to just participate, because I'm still learning a lot about video specifically, and being able to interchange with you guys who have a lot more experience in that medium than I do. Certainly beneficial to me, and hopefully will show up in my future creations. So thanks again for everything.
Oh, thank you. You'll notice a little bit of noise in the background. My wife has just gotten home. I told her I'm done at 10, so if she makes noise, hey, that's on me. Right. So we're at the final minutes here. So thank you very much. Now, James, you wanted to talk about your light, this light here. Do you guys want to stick around to hear what James want to have to say about this light before we go? It puts us over time.
I'm here.
I'm here.
All right, James, take it away. Not 20 minutes this time, though.
Yeah, no. Okay, so this came out sort of last night. So this is from Aperture. It's not necessarily this is the little light. The light I'm really excited that just announced yesterday was the Aperture Nova P600C. This is basically their brand new flagship camera. See, we're talking about cameras so much. I'm talking about cameras. It's their brand new light. It's a 2x1. And it is a direct competitor to the RE Sky Panels S60s, which are like the industry gold standards of filmmaking at much lower cost rates. Still very high, but still relatively high compared to most people's lights. But for what it can offer, its ability, what they're talking about, outputting way more light than a Sky Panel S60. A light panel Gemini 2x1, a Titan Roto light 2x1. Like a lot of the things that they're talking about. They're trying to go a lot more cableless. It's very interesting. So for those of you that don't know necessarily what the Nova, they came out with Nova P300. Actually, that's what's my key light right now, like about 4 feet up over here. That's what's lighting me like right now at 1,500%, and this light is going to be 2 times brighter. It's a full bicolor RGB WW light, and it's probably one of the best investments I've ever had was this Nova P300C. So I'm really excited to see what the Nova P600C looks like.
And guys, I'll tell you, from doing a channel, lighting is one of the first things you need to address in any sort of production. Yes, you want a good camera, you want a good lens, you definitely want a good microphone after that.
Lighting, hello?
Yeah. So John's having...
Just a little bit.
Poor John.
And look...
Godox LED, I don't know what the heck happened to it, but whatever, I'll figure it out.
You can control it all by a smartphone, so I can just I want to add more bright. Ooh, too much.
Yeah, and look at each one of us. Look at James and the lighting. He's got a very simple lighting there. Me, I went a little bit crazy. I went with the kind of rainbow look, and this is just something I tried out today. I tried different colors, and we've got Magnus. And look at Magnus here. The colors he's got a very simple sort of soft sort of magenta into a deep purple, and then we've got John who lost his lights, but John also had a very wonderful color profile as well. And lighting is very, very important. So if you want to know more about the lighting, check out James Jackson Films. So when I repost these videos, I'm going to put a link to everybody's site. But if you check on YouTube, James Jackson Films is the name of James's channel. I believe John Drummond, that's the name of your channel.
Right.
And surprisingly, Magnus Video Productions is the name of Magnus's video channel.
Yes.
Well, guys, you want to say one final word before I sign off here? I'm tired.
Thanks
Let's
for
go.
everything.
Thanks everybody for joining us. For everybody that's willing to sit down, join us. We love you all.
Everybody give this video a like, please.
Yes, please hit that like
Hit the
button,
like
and you'll
before-
make our days when you subscribe today.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you to the panel, and thank you for watching The Ordinary Filmmaker. Let's see if I can do a graceful sign off here by pressing my buttons. Not my buttons, but the buttons up here. I don't know what I'm saying. Thank you very much. Have yourself a great weekend, and we'll see you again next Friday at 8 p.m. Take care now.
Bye.
See ya.